And we're back. So, just read a short story. I guess it's about 100 pages long. It is The Island of Dr. Moreau by H.G. Wells. Now, I like the classics. I like science fiction. So, this is a story that I've known about, but I haven't read before. And so I finally got around to it, and I'm not sure what to think. So as far as the story goes, it's very straightforward. A guy named Prendick is marooned. He's shipwrecked, and he's picked up by this guy named Montgomery and his strange servant, and they're taken to this island where there's this Dr. Moreau. And Dr. Moreau obviously is crazy. He is doing experiments on animals to try to make them into humans. That's the story. That's the basic setup, the concept, the plot. But from the very beginning, from the time that Prendick is taken onto a boat and all of a sudden he wakes up and there's all these animals, and it's just these kind of just gruesome description of these animals, just their savagery, their smell, their stink, all of this. Well, you get this man Montgomery, who's Dr. Moreau's right-hand man. Well, he has this manservant, and he's described, he is very strange looking, he's savage looking, and he's described in this animalistic terms, talking about his jaw set, his jaw structure, his nose, his mandibles. Well, it's a black man. And so immediately, and I don't know that I would have seen anything like this had I read this when I was younger, but just very quickly, like, man, this is very racist in tone, in nature. It's describing, not only is it describing a black man in animalistic tones, but he is animalistic. His eyes are green in the light at night. He is just, he barely talk, he croaks, he just, everything about him is like an animal. And you realize later on that, well, that's because he used to be an animal, that Dr. Moreau took a creature and then tried to make him into human, and this is one of the more well-developed, more humanoid creatures. And so as Prendick gets on this island, he encounters just the horrors of what Dr. Moreau is doing. The screams of the animals. I mean, it's disgusting to think about, just the shrieks and the screams of these animals as they're being dissected and they're being worked upon. And probably without any anesthesia. And Dr. Moreau, his whole thing is trying to figure out what makes someone a human. And this is science fiction at its core. This is the idea of what speculative science fiction, of just saying, what is it that makes humans human? What if science progresses in this way? What are the unintended consequences? And clearly, Dr. Moreau is set up as the villain. He's this antagonist. He has this idea that the ends justifies the means. And so in that sense, at first, it's this thought of, my gosh, this is racist in nature. Because you even get this idea of the evolutionary chain where you get from animals to white civilized man. Well, somewhere in between is the Negro. Somewhere in between is the black man. And so the first kind of assemblages of being a human is the black man. Like, that's the most savage man. That's kind of the link between the animal and the civilized European white man. So in that sense, you're thinking, my gosh, this is just so racist in so many different ways. It's so problematic. However, Dr. Moreau is clearly insane. I mean, he's just doing horrific things trying to make these humans. He rules over these animal-human hybrids with a whip, like a literal whip. He is their master. He uses religious language that he is their God, and that is to instill this fear in them to keep them under his control, because there's lots of them, and they're strong, and they're fast, and they're quick. If they wanted to rise up, they could kill them just like that. And so he has to put this fear in them. He has to use, I mean, just very, and I don't know H.G. Wells' philosophy. I don't know what H.G. Wells thought about all of this. I haven't looked into it, so I don't know where he's coming from. So I don't know if this is just him looking at the possibilities of science. I don't know if this is H.G. Wells saying, look, here's why this is so wrong. I don't know if he's saying, hey, this is just how it is, and this is how some people are. I don't know what the purpose or the message is behind all of this, but you see Dr. Moreau using very slave master language and practices to keep these savage beasts / humans in line. Because the more intelligent they are, this is one of the things they look at, is just that pain and suffering is part of what makes a human a human. And this is something that's explored in lots of science fiction with artificial intelligence. What makes someone a human? Is it the soul? When does the soul come into play? Is the ability to suffer or feel pain or feel shame, is that what makes a human a human? And if that's the case, why would you want to be a human? And so at some point, Dr. Moreau is killed, and Prendick, who is at first, he's just trying to survive on this island. He has to kind of adopt Dr. Moreau's tactics of being the master, being the god, to make sure he's not killed. Because one of the things that happens is that these creatures, they find that after a time, the longer the time goes, then they start to resort to their animalistic tendencies. So they can be made human, intelligent for a while, but then they resort to their animalistic tendencies. And so then you have this exploration of just, what is an animal? You know, the classic, who's the true savage here? Is it the people? Is it the animals? Are we all animalistic in our nature, and yet we try to pretend like we're not, with intelligence, with education? It's kind of the Lord of the Flies, where, you know, if we're left to our own devices, if we have to survive, do we turn into animals ourselves? It's only like 90 to 100 pages long. I think it's worth reading just because it's made me think since then, just what and which is what all good science fiction should do. It should make you, well, I mean, obviously there's some fun lasers that don't have to make you think, but the best science fiction really makes you ponder life and the meaning of life and your existence and your purpose. And I think this book, even in its problematic themes, it really does make you examine, what is a human? What is an animal? Is there some sort of blend between the two? What separates us from an animal? So in that sense, I think it is worth reading. It is worth exploring. So as always, my name is Mark Taylor. Until next time, keep reading, and you have no idea how valuable you